Today we're going to be taking a look at a new app. Well, it's new to me. I've heard of Morpholio for a long time. They have other types of architectural apps, but this is a sketchbook sketching app called Morpholio Journal Sketchbook. And so we're going to be taking a look at the pros and the cons to see if it's worth the money. Because guys, I don't think you're going to like this, but it's worth $4 a year or $1 a month. So I really want to know if it's worth it. And honestly, I think anything is worth $4 a year, but let's just check it out. Let's see what the pros and cons are, and then you guys decide in the comments if it's worth it or not. So when you download the app for the very first time, it's not going to have that notes tab that I have in there, but it's going to look pretty much like this, like a Moleskine sketchbook. And I'm pretty sure that you guys are familiar with Moleskine, but you open it and basically I've already taken some notes that we're going to be using to go over, and you can keep your notes separately in different pages. And so going back to the first page, let's start out with the pros. And the first pro that I've written down here is that it's really easy and simple to use. What I mean by that is that, guys, you don't need to look at tutorials to learn how to use this. I guarantee you that by the time you're done watching this video, you'll actually know exactly how to use this app. But you can see that there's two ribbons, one at the top, and you know, just in case you guys get lost, let me show you what I mean by that. So we have one up here and then one down here. And so what those do is basically the one in the bottom controls the ribbon at the top. So if you press this button here at the bottom, you basically unlock this, which allows you to change the page type, this one which allows you to select your brush, this one selects your palettes, line types or line weights, this one is line types. You can undo with that grayed out arrow, and you can clear out the whole page, which we're not going to do, or you can bring out a ruler, and we're going to talk about each of those things a little bit more. But in a nutshell, that's it. There's nothing else that this app really offers, with some minor things that we'll get into. And so it's really easy to use, really simple. You don't need to learn how to use it using tutorials. Next thing is the color palette. It's very nice, it's very easy. You can see that they're laid out by either engineering, landscape, interior design, architecture. There's many different types of palettes that you can use. I don't know why the architecture palette has chosen those colors for architecture, but it is what it is. And so the nice thing is that everything is nicely organized. You don't have to be recreating palettes. You just simply select one that you like and you use those colors, making the experience very easy. Next is the ruler, and I've already drawn some things here to kind of practice, but I'll show you how it works. So you just press that button, the ruler pops up. You could see that the angle is shown in degrees in the center. That makes it really nice, really simple to use. Then once you lay out your ruler, it pretty much snaps into certain degrees. I think it goes by like 15 degrees that it snaps into, but definitely once you get to like a 90 degree, it snaps in, and you just trace the sides, and just like that, you'll see that automatically it snaps on, and it makes using this ruler really simple. And so I've seen apps that have that, and most of you guys have seen apps that have that feature, but it's still nice, and I'm glad that they brought that over to this app. Next is the line type. So basically any type of brush that you use, or even eraser, uses the same line weight, and so there's only going to be 5, and I've laid them out here so you can see what the thicknesses look like. That's it, there's only those 5. And then there's different types of lines. So there's the straight line, there's the dashed line, there's the dotted line, and then there's a continuous line, and that's what those look like. So that really makes it easy. If you're going to be creating diagrams like this one that I drew here really quickly, it really makes it simple to draw these diagrams without having to worry about creating new lines. Now the experience is very realistic. As you can see here, I drew all this by hand and I wrote it all by hand, and it actually looks like a picture of a sketchbook. You can see that this sketch right here looks hand drawn. Some of these other apps make it look kind of cheesy or kind of digital. I think this app does it a really good job at making it look like a realistic sketchbook. And it even has this pro that, notice how down here it says notes. Well, when I flip over the page, you can see the backside of it just like you would in real life when the pages bleed. Something else that I love is that the lines aren't pressure sensitive like they are in some other apps. But if you're drawing, and let's select this type there, coffee break, you'll see that if you draw a line slowly, it's really thick just like it is in real life, and then if you draw quickly, it thins out, and so that makes the lines that you draw in this app look really realistic. Something else that I love about this app is the ability to create different types of sketchbooks. So in other apps, when you save a file, you're saving different files, and it's up to you to organize them afterwards. In this app, you click this button here, and all your sketchbooks that you create will be organized here, and so you can have some sketchbooks for work, some for school, school, some for your personal life, some only for notes, so on and so forth. And it's all here. And instead of having to look for different files, you just, as you would in real life, go through the pages of the sketchbook. And so that is a really cool experience rather than having to scavenger through your files. Next is probably one of my favorite things about this app, and it excites me so much thinking that I'm going to start to use this app more often, is the ability to change the paper type or the page type. And so you know that Moleskines are expensive. They can cost $20 for one single sketchbook, and it is really worth it. But you can see here that if I want to make this left page dot grid, all I do is I click that, and just like that, I have the dot grids on the left and the lines on the right. And guess what? That doesn't alter the rest of the sketchbook. The rest of the sketchbook has their own format depending on what I choose. And I love that so much. You even have the option of selecting a calendar. And there's different types of calendars, and you can use this to write your notes. So this actually on its own is one of the features that makes me love this app so much. Sometimes some of us like to add pictures or cutouts of sketches into our sketchbooks, and we'll tape them and we'll glue them in. This app lets you do something similar. It lets you import images. So I've imported this one here, and just by clicking on this button down here at the bottom, it lets me now select the image, and I could scale it. I could turn it around however I want. And so nothing is set in stone in this app. So I could always add more images. I could add images on top of other images. It really is incredible, all the possibilities with this app. You could also add sticky notes, and so we could move those sticky notes around, but as you've seen already, these sticky notes function like bookmarks, and so when I'm flipping the page, that bookmark will stay there, and these ones will not show. But you can use sticky notes to call out other parts of your sketches, or if you drew something you don't want to forget, like this, I'm like, what is that thing? You can put a sticky note next to it and remind yourself what exactly that drawing was. Then finally, the last pro that I've written down here is the ability to print. That's right, print your sketchbook. Now, unfortunately, I can't show you what I mean, and that is because it doesn't exist yet. But when you first get the app, you'll have this nice little slide welcoming show that tells you all these features that are included in the app. And one of the features says, coming soon, you'll be able to print your journal with Moleskine, the favorite notebook of creatives for over a century. They're not lying with that one. Stay tuned for this exciting update. So they have to add the update first, but I imagine that you'll be able to print your whole sketchbook, your whole digital sketchbook, in the form of a real sketchbook, and then they'll mail it to you in the form of an actual Moleskine sketchbook. And if that is the case, that's going to be an amazing feature to have. Now, unfortunately, we've come to the part of the video that talks about the cons. And so one of the first cons is that, as you've seen, there's no customization, guys. So for those of you that like all these features and like to be able to make the app your own, you can't do that. I haven't seen any way that you can import new brushes. You can't even add colors to the color palette. There's really nothing you can do. You can see that there's no plus symbol or anything. And if they do give you that option, it's really well hidden. Like, if those options are available, these guys are great at hiding these things around their app, because I haven't been able to find it. You can't do it for line weights, you can't do it for line types, you can't customize anything. What you see, guys, is what you get. The next thing is, if you've seen my other videos where I use Procreate, Procreate allows you to create a time lapse. So you don't have to record your screen as you're drawing. Just every drawing that you make has its own memory. And so once you're done drawing, you're like, I want to export this as a video, basically the process showing the sketch. And you can't do that on this app. So that's a real bummer. It's not a complete necessary thing for me on this app specifically, but for some of you guys who are looking for something to replace Procreate, you're not going to be able to with this app fully if you use time lapses in your own sketches or videos. Now, this next one, you're going to look at me, you're going to be like, Mooch, you are being way too picky. But hey, I'm just trying to point everything out. This is definitely not a deal breaker. And if it is for some of you guys, I will question why. But I'm just going to point it out. And that's the thickness of a page. All the pages, you know, they go to great lengths to simulate the experience of pen marks or pen ink bleeding through a sticky note. They go through the simulation of experiencing, you know, what a diagram would look like if you were to sketch it out. But the thickness of the pages are non-existent. It's just so weird. And then on top of that, that doesn't bother you. I'm sure this will, which is the thickness of the actual cover itself. I wish, fine, okay, leave the pages without thickness, but at least add some thickness to that cover. It just looks so odd. Again, I know I'm being picky, but hey, just wanted to mention it. All right, so the next one, opacity. This is something that drives me a little insane. I wish that just like in Photoshop or even Procreate, there would be a little slider where you could change the opacity of the line that you're drawing, but you can't do that. There's no such thing. And so what I did here is I drew two lines so you could see. If you draw two lines in real life on top of each other, that intersection in the middle where the two lines cross would be darker. It didn't happen with black, so I'm like, oh, it's probably because I'm using black. It can't get any darker than black. So I tried with gray and the same thing happens. There's no opacity. So for those of you guys who want to create construction lines, the workaround would be to choose a very light gray, draw something, and then draw on top of it with black, or use a color pencil, because there is the option to use color pencils in this app. As you can see, it's this one right here. But basically the idea would be that you would choose a very light gray, and then I don't know, you would just draw something, and then once you're done drawing that, you switch back to the pen, switch back to black, and then you draw over that. That would be the workaround. But, you know, kind of simulating sketching in real life, but I just wish they threw in a little slider for opacity into this app. Next one is a bummer, but it makes sense why they wouldn't include it, and that's layers. So layers are important, again, because when you're drawing construction lines, like for example here, some of us don't want to see those construction lines anymore. I like to keep them, but some of us don't, and so I would like to have the option to turn them off. Now, why wouldn't they add that? Number one, they probably really want to simulate the sketching experience, and if you're sketching for real, you're not going to be creating layers, okay? The most that you'll be able to do is bring in some vellum paper and trace it over your lines, I guess, and then tape it onto the page. And so that would be actually a pretty cool feature to have, the ability to bring not only sticky notes but vellum paper. But anyway, back to the matter of fact, which is that you cannot create layers in this app like you would in Procreate or Photoshop. There are 0 layers in this app, and so that might be a big drawback for some of you guys who are thinking about getting this app. Now, the next reason that they probably didn't add that is because could you imagine having layers for your whole entire sketchbook that, as you see here at the bottom, has an infinite amount of pages? You'd have an infinite amount of layers per sketchbook. And so one way that they could do it is to tie the layers to the pages themselves, but that, you know, that tends to get a little bit complicated. And maybe what Morpholio wanted to do here is that they really wanted to keep this app as simple and as realistic as possible. But to end that topic right there is that you don't have the option to add layers in this app. Now, the next one is the colors. The colors drive me a little bit crazy because since you cannot add layers, then you can't select where the color goes. So the color is pretty much going to go on top of your lines. Let me show you what I mean. So if I want to draw with this pen brush here, right, I'll select the tiniest line weight, and I'll say that I want to make this building, let's say orange, right? Look at the size of that brush. I just ruined my whole entire drawing. And so if there were layers, I could push this back and then go back with the eraser and then erase around. But here that doesn't happen. Here I'm actually erasing my whole building. So luckily they've added an undo button and I could undo that. Now the workaround that I've found is that instead of using that specific brush, you could use this brush right over here. It's a highlighter brush, and you can, that one, the smallest one, does work. So you can see that you can color in your building now and it works just fine. And so again, since there's no layers, which this is actually very realistic, when you draw over a black line, it'll start to fade the black of the line out. And so of course the workaround would be that once you're finished drawing or coloring in, you would go in with the black marker if you want to, or the black pen, and just draw over it as you would in real life. So not a huge bummer, but still it makes some of those brushes unusable in your sketches. The next con is really a pain, and that's the fact that it doesn't let me rotate the canvas like I could in other apps. So I could actually zoom out, I could zoom in, I could pan around, but I cannot rotate. There's no way to rotate this. The way that you would rotate the canvas is if you actually rotate your iPad. But guess what? If you're not on a table, if you're out in the field, for example, as I am sometimes, and you're drawing like this, and then you rotate it, it actually rotates the whole entire page back to how it was. So it's always going to be upright, and it just makes it really difficult to sketch if you're not on a table. If you're on a table, everything's fine, but otherwise it's a real pain. So the next con that we have here is the ruler. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, wait a minute, how could you write ruler as a con when you've written ruler as a pro? And the reason I did that is because there's only one type of ruler. And so that's why I drew this muffin here, because I drew this line and this line and this line with the ruler. And then when I tried to make a circle, I went back to the ruler and I saw that there's no protractor. protractor, so I exaggerated the curve. You know, the actual curve would be something like this. I wish they could add a protractor to this app. That would really make me happy. And to give the benefit of the doubt, on their app they say that there's the ability to purchase things, and so some of those things could be add-ons. They say that there's add-ons that you could purchase, and so I was wondering, maybe you can purchase rulers, and I looked all around the app and they didn't give me the option anywhere. And if they did, again, they're really good at hiding things. But what I suggest they should do, if they do sell rulers or other additional things, rather than hide it, why don't you add it to this screen here, so that when I click the ruler, they're like, hey, by the way, we sell a protractor for 99 cents or whatever it is. I don't know what it is, because otherwise it just makes me think that there's no such thing in this app, and you really need triangles and protractors in this app if you want to make some very nice sketches, in my opinion. Next, we have the no redo as a con. You can see that they've added an undo, so if you draw something and then you're not happy with it, you just click the button, you undo it. But what if you're like, you accidentally undid that? What if you're like, no, I didn't want to undo that? Now you can't redo it. They have no option. I've tried holding the undo button and there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a redo in this app. There's no shortcut that I've seen or anything. So that's a real drawback for some of us that don't want to have to be erasing certain things, or like if you accidentally erase something and then you want to redo that, there's no way to do it. Also, since I'm on the topic, I want to mention that the undo button is kind of limited because it only lets you undo a total of 10 or 15 times, which is not unheard of. I know that Photoshop, when you're undoing too many times, it stops letting you do that. This app, unfortunately, is very limited when it comes to undoing, and it's non-existent when it comes to redoing. Finally, this is not a huge deal, especially since this app is made to be simple and be realistic, but there's no selection. So like I mentioned to you, I can grab these images and rescale them, and the same with these sticky notes here, but I can't do it with anything else in the app. There's no marquee tool, there's no polygonal lasso tool, there's nothing that allows me to select my sketches and then move them around to somewhere else. And I think that would be a really cool feature for this app to have, but at the moment it doesn't have anything like that. What you draw is what you draw, and that's it. I think the only workaround that you could do is take a screenshot of it and then import it as an image into your sketchbook, and that's the only way to defeat that con. So overall, you can see that this app is pretty much balanced when it comes to pros and cons. Some of the cons that I mentioned are kind of too picky for what this app is, but I just decided I wanted to make a list of everything that I could possibly come up with, and then I would let you guys decide if this app is worth the $4 a year or if it's not worth it. So now down in the comments, let me know what you guys think about this app. Let me know your overall thoughts. Let me know if you guys would use it, and if you wouldn't, let me know which of the cons is the reason why you wouldn't use it, or let me know what features you think are missing from this app. Also, let me know what other apps you prefer over this one here, and if you do plan on using it, let me know why it is that you want to use this app instead of other apps that you've seen out there. As always, thank you so much for watching. My name is Mooch. This is Pigeonhead Architecture. I'll see you down in the comments.